The day of the Red Prince started like any other normal day. She was in her office when she received a call. Looking at the phone number, she saw it didn't have any of the signature marks to indicate it was a magical call. So, whoever this call was a prospective client, one that could pay in cash. Picking up the phone excitedly, Red answered. "Hello, you've reached Red Prince's detective agency. How can we assist you today?" On the other side of the phone, there was a slight pause before she heard a slightly panicked voice asking her, "Hi, do you deal with supernatural things?" "Yes, of course, sir. What kind of thing do you think you're dealing with?" "Oh, I'm not sure. It might be a possession, it might be a ghost, it might be something else together. I don't know, it might even be a demon." Red thought about it for a second, and then almost scowled to herself. Every time a normal person just saw something weird happen to them, all of a sudden it was immediately a demon or a ghost or a possession. They didn't even have creative solutions. She missed the days back when people thought it was going to be a fae or a vampire, or even that one time where someone thought it was a werewolf. Those were simpler times. But a job's a job, so she had to be sure she knew what she was doing. "Okay, so tell me about what happened, and then we can work from there, okay? I do investigate supernatural things, so I'm more than certain I can help you with this." The man scoffed for a second, before finally responding, "Fine, I'll tell you about it." The man, who later introduced himself as Henry, described his situation. He was a traveling salesman, so oftentimes he was away for work. His daughter, who was only 8 years old, often just handled things herself, so one time when he was out in Cathedral City, he found an antique shop, and in the antique shop, when he was just browsing around, trying to kill time before his next sale, he discovered something he thought his daughter would like. An old-fashioned ceramic doll. The doll was interesting. Her skin felt, unlike other porcelain, felt softer, and her hair felt warmer, and her clothes didn't have the weird fabric feel of normal doll clothes. It actually felt like real fabric, just smaller. So he bought it from the antique shop and then went on his way. He didn't think about much about it until a week later when he brought it home for his daughter. He gave it to his little girl, Yvonne, and she immediately fell in love with the doll, taking it with her wherever she went, oftentimes eating with it, drinking tea, and just having full-on conversations. At first, Henry thought it was normal. After all, what little girl didn't play pretend with dolls? But then time went on, and weird things started happening. Yvonne insisted that the doll's name was Vanis, Vanis. And no matter what Henry tried to suggest, when he suggested Elizabeth, Victoria, or even Mary, she said that those weren't her name, that Vanis was her true name. That was a little weird, but he figured little girls could be a little strange sometimes. But then weird things started happening around the house. First, it was simple things. A chair not quite where he left it, a cup in the sink rather than on the counter. And then they started getting weirder. He began finding notes around the house written in crayon. At first, he thought they were from Yvonne. Maybe she was finally taking up writing. But the actual writings were freaking him out. "Hello. Thank you. Can we get more food? I'm hungry. When are you coming home?" Those kind of things were written all over the house. Finally, the thing that finally drove him to call Red Prince is when he came home from a long trip and found the doll in the kitchen, sitting on the counter, with a knife covered in red substance in her left hand, and red on her left hand. Freaked out, Henry ran around his house trying to find Yvonne. He found her in her room, taking a nap, but he was so freaked out, he left his house and took Yvonne with her. Only thing he managed to take with him was the phone he had, so that's why he called up Red Prince. Because he was able to look her up online, and she seems to be the best thing to do for it. So here he is, asking her for his help. Red nodded and occasionally gave some affirmative noises to the man's story. It wasn't nothing too unusual, but it definitely felt like something supernatural was going on here. However, she didn't feel like it was a threat. She felt like there was more going on that Henry wasn't talking about, but she was used to people refusing to share things. Sometimes people just had to keep things hidden, even when it wasn't in their own interest. So, she agreed to go down there. Okay, I'll agree to investigate. You are aware of my fees, yes? You have fees? Henry asked. She giggled. Of course. You see, any private detective has fees. For this, I think my rate is going to be 30 aura a day, along with the 5 aura consulting fee. Can you repeat that? Are you certain? Of course. It's 3 aura a day, and a 500 centi consulting fee. Oh, okay, I thought you said... Never mind. Yes, I agree to that. Cool. I can see you in about 30 minutes. Do you want me to meet at your house or somewhere else? We can meet at my house, but I didn't even give you the address yet. Isn't it 500 River Walk Way? Yeah. How did you... I know things. Now, I'll see you in 30 minutes. Need anything for the coffee shop? Maybe get some food for my daughter? I mean, she hasn't eaten yet. Of course. I'll see you then. There was a click as Red put down the phone. She got up and stretched and walked to her car. And just when she thought today was going to be boring. Out in her car, she went down to Canceled Coffee. She said hi to Ethan while there and picked up a couple muffins. And then after picking up the muffins, she went down to 500 River Walk Way and found Henry outside with his daughter Yvonne sleeping in his arms. Henry began to whisper to her while he was tired. So sorry about this, but she kind of fell asleep. Are you okay with this? Yeah, sure, of course. I know how to be quiet. Henry nodded, and he gestured towards the door. She's in there. Just be careful, okay? I don't want her to cut you. Red nods, and then begins to go inside. When she goes inside, she found that on the counter, Vanis was no longer there. What Red did see was red on the countertops, and even tiny footprints leading away from the kitchen and into the little girl's room. Little red footprints across a white carpet. Seeing this, Red kept one hand on her grimoire and the other on her flashlight as she turned it on and began to approach the little girl's room. I'm coming in. I'm not going to be a threat to you, so please don't try to hide. As Red slowly entered the girl's room, she saw the doll sitting in the middle of the room. She no longer had the knife on her, but she was still covered in red. Now that Red could get a clear look at her, she could see it was tomato juice. Oh, hello, you must be Vanis. The doll was silent and didn't move when Red spoke. However, Red felt like there was intelligence behind those eyes, so she tried another tactic. So, Vanis, does the black moon howl? There was a long pause before Red could hear a teeny voice speaking. Only during resurrection. Red smiled at this and crouched down, seeing the doll. Oh, I think I know what you are. Red smiled. She held her hand out to Vanis and then offered, I can take you outside to talk to Henry. I think this is all a misunderstanding. There was more silence for a moment before a tiny pale hand gripped Red's dark human hand. Outside, Henry managed to lay his daughter into his car and then turned around when he heard his front door open. Turning around, he expected Red to have said the job was done, or even be holding the corpse of the doll. What he did not expect was Red to be walking alongside the doll, with the doll walking alongside her like a very, very small child. Henry looked at them both before he tried to speak. What? 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 Huh? What? Red lifted a hand, and the man stopped. So, I'm going to act as a mediator right now, okay? Henry tilted his head. What do you mean by mediator? She needs to be gone. I am acting as a mediator. We can discuss what will happen afterwards, but right now you both need to be heard. Now, Henry, tell Vanis how you feel. Henry felt ridiculous for a moment explaining the situation to a doll, but then again, she was walking by herself, and you could see right there that her eyes, her all too human eyes, were staring into his. So, he explained what was going on. Then after he was done, Red turned to Vanis. Okay, Vanis, I want you to explain to Henry what you explained to me. Vanis gave a slight nod. Henry almost collapsed when he saw it. No matter what he did, it was just so shocking to see this happening. Vanis began to explain her story. A long time ago, I was alive once. I was even human. I don't remember a whole lot from my human days, but I remember I loved dolls. It was something I shared with my daughter, and it was a joy that we shared together. One day, though, I got very sick. I knew I wasn't going to be long for this world, so I made arrangements. I made arrangements that as soon as I died, that my bones were to be ground and added to the ceramic of this very special new doll. A doll that was supposed to look like me when I was younger, and then given to my daughter. That way she would never be alone. I don't even remember my death. I mean, I remember that I died, but then after that, it was just kinda nothing. I wasn't even aware until the box opened, and then I saw my daughter's crying face when she saw me. I don't know what happened to me after I died, but what I do know is when my daughter opened the gift that contained the doll, I regained my awareness. I was different back then. I couldn't talk and I couldn't move, but I could hear, and I could also see. I saw how much my daughter cried, and I heard how much he missed me. No matter what I tried, I couldn't comfort her. I couldn't speak to her. I couldn't go down to her bed to hold her. I couldn't even give her a little movement to show her I was alive. And instead of comforting her, the doll that was made in my image, it seemed to only make her sadder. I don't even think she lasted a year after she got me, before she died of a broken heart and by her own hand. I do remember after that, the family just put me away, along with all her other toys, up into a dark attic. I don't remember much from this time either. I just remember it was a whole lot of nothing happening. And then one day I woke back up and I was in the antique shop, just looking out into the window. Then I saw you walk by, Henry. I don't know what was about you, but you reminded me of someone. Someone I knew once, but I can't remember. Someone who makes me feel warm and special. But after collecting all that dust, I guess I must have been in that case for years. But when you came in and bought it, and when I saw Yvonne for the first time, it was like seeing my daughter all over again. She had the same smile, she had the same laugh, she had the same sense of curiosity, and she had the same love, even the same love for dolls. I don't know what made Yvonne special that my daughter didn't, but around Yvonne, I could move again. I could talk again, and she just loved me so much more because of it. I'm sorry, but I did get hungry. I don't know what was about it, but I was hungry for that entire time, but this was the first time I could actually eat. So I'm sorry that I was eating your food, and when you saw me on the counter with a knife, that was because I was cutting a tomato. I didn't mean to scare you, Henry. I'm so sorry. But I just get so hungry, and I don't want to be hungry anymore. I know this is a very, very scary situation, but if you will have me, I would love to be a part of you and Yvonne's family. You both remind me so much of my own family, and you just both make me so happy. And I think I can help make your family happy too if you'll have me. Henry heard Vanis's words. He was silent for a minute, and then 2 minutes. No one was sure what he was going to do. Vanis knew it was unlikely, but she still had hope that Henry would accept her. Red also had hope that she would be accepted. She knew it was often a scary thing when an esoteric being came into a Tipicam's life, but she knew it could also be a wonderful thing. So many ordinary people dreamed of the day where they found a magical artifact, or they found a fairy, or they discovered their best friend was a witch. But instead of Henry being happy about any of this, his expression turned from confusion to fear to anger. So you're telling me you're a full-grown woman? Well, I guess technically I was a full-grown woman once, but nothing. You're asking me to let a full-grown woman live, not just in my house, a full-grown woman I am not related to, that I am not married to, and you want me to say that it's totally okay that you play with my daughter and live in her room? Well, I don't have to live in her room. There's plenty of rooms in there. I'm sure we could find something that'll work. No. Yvonne loves you so much. If I tried moving you to a different room, she'll just take you back. I'm sorry, Vanis, but this is way too fucking creepy. I'm not letting you anywhere near my daughter. I'm not letting any full-grown adults anywhere near her because I don't know you. No, but nothing. You will leave, or I'm getting rid of you the hard way. Henry took something out of his pocket. He was a smoker, so every time he left the house, even when he wasn't sure he was going to be gone for very long, he brought cigarettes. And along with bringing cigarettes, he brought something to light them. Pulling out his lighter, he struck it once, twice, and had the flame going as he began to approach Red Prince and then Vanis. Red took this opportunity to step forward and lift her hand up in front of Henry's face as if to gesture him to stop. Hold on, Henry. If you don't want Vanis in your home, that is your right as the owner of your home. I rent this fucking place. Your right as a renter of your home. But if you think I'm going to stand here while you set fire to a sapient being, you are quite mistaken. Well, what are you going to do with that creepy doll then? I'm going to take her to a place where she can be loved for who and what she is. If Yvonne wants to visit her, she can. My daughter's not going anywhere near that thing. Oh, we'll see about that. Red lifted her knees down and picked up Vanis and then walked past Henry. She walked with such confidence and ease that Henry wasn't sure how to respond. When Red went to her car, she buckled Vanis into the passenger side and then began to drive away. As she drove away, she rolled down her window and yelled out at Henry. You still have a chance to make this right, Henry. Henry shook his head and rudely gestured towards Red. I am making it right. Right for me and right for my daughter. Red only responded with a shrug. Well, okay. I'll send the invoice out over later. You have a nice day. As Red began to drive away, Henry realized just how much he was being charged. Ah, fuck me, he said, before he kicked his own car. As he kicked the car, it dented in his door a little bit, and Yvonne began to cry as she was woken up by the noise. Ah, shit, he said to himself, now wondering just what kind of trouble he got himself into. As Red drove, and Vanis was sitting next to her, there was silence for a few minutes, before Red finally began to speak. Just to be clear, Vanis, you're not possessed or anything like that. To put it simply, you're a living thing. And the more love that you get, the more of a living thing you'll become. Where I'm taking you, they're going to love you, and you are going to be safe. Really? Vanis asked Red. Red nodded, and then just for a moment at the stop sign, she grabbed Vanis's hand. Her little hand, which was once cold ceramic when she first met, was now soft and warm, and she could even feel the individual fingers wrap around Red's finger. Yes, really, I promise. Red drove to a street, Cinnamon Street, and at the end of it, under a series of long, empty houses, there was one house that wasn't empty. This house always had a storm going over it, even on a clear day. As Red unbuckled Vanis and then herself, she took out of the car and walked alongside Vanis. She took short, small steps as they walked up to the door together. When they made it to the stoop, Red helped grab her hand and lift her up. When they made it to the door creaked open for itself. The house was a little chilly, but surprisingly wasn't cold. And in the room, just past the hallway, was the living room. And there was a girl just floating there and reading from a history textbook. When she saw Red approach, she closed the book and thumped it down, but instead of thumping it down on the floor, it thumped and rested on the ceiling, almost as if the gravity was pulling it towards the ceiling. Oh, hello, Red. Oh, do you have a friend for me? Tiffany, the ghost girl, floated down a little bit, looking curiously first at Red, and then at Vanis the doll. Vanis hid behind Red's legs for a second. Oh, don't worry, I'm not scary. My name's Tiffany. What's your name? Vanis? Vanis whispered back to her. She was nervous. She figured there must have been other supernatural things out there. I mean, Vanis was alive, so why couldn't ghosts be a thing? But still, it was such an odd thing to see an actual ghost. Especially when this ghost seemed so familiar. Vanis wasn't sure who she reminded her of, but there was a warm memory. Back when she was a little girl, she had a warm memory of someone close to her who then disappeared. Vanis, what a pretty name. You remind me a lot of a friend I had back when I was alive. Funny, I was about to say the same to you. At this point, Vanis came out from behind Tiffany, and then Tiffany noticed Vanis's face. I think you were my friend back when I was alive. Vanis only tilted her head at this statement. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't quite remember you. Tiffany nodded and smiled at Vanis. Oh, that's quite all right. I look a lot different now than I did back then. But that's quite all right. You're always welcome here. We teach people about the old days here. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we can spook them. Do you like spooking people? Vanis looked down at her shoes as she kicked at the dust. Well, I've not really done it on purpose before, but it might be fun to try. Tiffany nodded her hands and clapped her hands together, which normally would have made a loud sound, but in the state, it was completely silent. Awesome, that's great to hear. Now, let's see if we can get you acquainted. Tiffany floated down even lower to get down to Vanis's height as she began to give her the guided tour. Red, seeing that these two were getting along so well together, she began to close the door. And as she closed the door, and as soon as she stepped outside, she called the phone number who called her just a little bit earlier today. On the other side, she heard the man's voice say, "Hello?" "Oh, hi, Henry. This is Red Prince. So, about the invoice I was about to send you,